Hello, everyone. It's Andre from SWL. Welcome to episode 13 of my series, the SWL DXing News Report. In this podcast, I talk about radio related news, frequency changes, new stations, closures, and anything else that might interest DXers. This program is presented as a video podcast, so you can sit back and listen or enjoy the visuals in the video. I have a packed episode today. There have been many big events in both the shortwave and medium wave world over the past week or two, with some big cuts from major broadcasters, but also, interestingly, possibly new stations appearing. In today's episode, I talk about cuts at the BBC and at AWR, Adventist World Radio, but there are more transmissions from Voice of Hope Africa coming, possibly new shortwave transmissions from Russia. There are tests for a new shortwave station called Sound of Africa. There is a possibility that Jordan and Greece might return to shortwave. So many interesting things happening. I end with the usual HF propagation forecast. And I also say a few words about the sun having reached solar maximum. The BBC reports that BBC News will make cuts of £24 million as part of a wider BBC effort to save £700 million a year. The interview program Hard Talk, which is very well known, is among the casualties. Its presenter, Stephen Sacker, who will now leave the BBC, called the move very depressing for the future of in-depth interviews that hold to account those people who are not held accountable in their own countries. The news service for Asian network news will also close, with the station now taking its news bulletins directly from Radio 1. The proposals would result in a loss of 155 jobs, with 130 journalism roles at risk and 25 technical roles, including camera operators. The National Union of Journalists in the UK said it was concerned about the long-term harm to the BBC without urgent investment. The BBC did not say anything about the future of BBC World Service, which has already seen cuts to its foreign language services, including its Chinese and Arabic services. The British government contributes about a quarter of the World Service's budget, which is £366 million, and the BBC has asked for an increase. It is understood that a decision about the World Service will come by the end of October. The BBC Director General, Tim Davie, has warned that the UK is struggling to counter a rise in what he calls pure propaganda from countries like Russia and China because of cuts to the BBC World Service. I reported in my previous episode that there were rumors that AWR would cut all its shortwave transmissions around the world, except the ones from their own transmitter in Guam. Sadly, the provisional HFCC schedules for the B24 season confirm these cuts. The HFCC is the High Frequency Coordination Conference. It is a group that coordinates frequencies used for shortwave broadcasting so that they don't clash. It releases schedules that have been agreed upon by broadcasters twice a year. There are the A schedules and the B schedules. The A schedules run from the end of March to the end of October, and the B schedules run from the end of October to the end of March. The B24 schedules will kick off on 27 October, so it is in about a week's time, and provisional versions of these have been released on the HFCC website. These schedules confirm that all AWR broadcasts from transmitters around the world, except Guam, will end on 26 October.
Adventist World Radio, AC na o, ito din sa pakwa, kilohertz, singkat sanga, veruk panga, ani.
AWR currently uses many transmitters, including Nauen in Germany, Moosbrunn in Austria, Talata Volonondri in Madagascar, Trincomalee in Sri Lanka, and Tashkent in Uzbekistan. Transmissions from all these locations will cease. This is a very sad day for shortwave indeed. AWR has been a strong and reliable presence on shortwave for many years, and it is sad to see them leave. There will be AWR transmissions from Guam, as I said, and AWR also has a vast network of FM transmitters around the world. So the station is still broadcasting, just not as much on shortwave anymore as it did before. There is a link in the description of this podcast to all current AWR transmissions. You still have about a week to hear them before they disappear from shortwave. The initial rumors about AWR leaving shortwave started when some reports emerged that the Moosbrunn transmitter in Austria might close down at the end of this year. There are two stations, according to the latest HFCC schedules, that will continue to use Moosbrunn for their transmissions for now. The German Amateur Radio Society, DARC, will continue to transmit from Monday to Saturday from 0700 to 0733 Central European Time, and on Sundays from 1100 to 1200 Central European Time on 6070 kilohertz. Central European Time is 2 hours ahead of UTC. The other station is Radio Joystick, a German music station that will transmit once a month on Sundays from 0 hour to 1300 Central European Time, that is 2200 UTC on a Saturday to 1100 UTC on a Sunday, and they use 7330 kilohertz. But Radio Joystick has announced that its transmissions from Moosbrunn will continue only on 3 November and on 1 December. From 2025, these transmissions will be on the first Sunday of the month from Wifferton on 9600 kilohertz. So this would seem to indicate that Moosbrunn will indeed close down at the end of 2024. I can also confirm that the curtain antenna for shortwave transmissions at Moosbrunn has been demolished. The Austrian news website Noon reports that the curtain antenna, which has been out of service since 2022, was demolished on September the 19th. It could transmit on shortwave from 9 to 21 megahertz with up to 300 kilowatts of power to the west and up to 100 kilowatts of power to the east. Noon reports that the 60-meter high curtain antenna was located in the middle of a wetland next to Moosbrunn and has been something of a landmark in the community since the early 1960s. The news website reports that radio programs on shortwave remain important because they are easy to receive, as we all know, but the antenna was still demolished. It was demolished because of its poor condition and repairs would have been too costly. The demolition was not announced by Österreichische Rundfunk and its subsidiary ORS, but a few onlookers turned up to view the event. When a transmitter station on Bissamberg in Vienna was demolished in 2010, ORS had to ask residents to leave the area. One person, however, refused and chained himself to the transmitter. And this is a scenario that they did not want to repeat in Moosbrunn. That is why they did it secretly. There is a link in the description of this podcast to the Austrian news website Noon, which is in German, where I found this information. You can see their story there, and there are pictures of the antenna being demolished. For copyright reasons, I cannot show you the pictures, but you can see it there in the article at the link. There have been some reports of technical issues at the Trincomalee, Sri Lanka transmitter. These issues have been noticed by DXers since 25 September, affecting various stations, including Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation itself on 11750 kHz and 11905 kHz. SLBC has been off air since 25 September. I have no further information about what the issues are, but it's probably worth monitoring these frequencies. Moving on to longwave. It has been confirmed just this week that Iceland has shut down its longwave transmission permanently. That was on 189 kHz. This happened in the first week of September already, but it has only just now been confirmed. The Icelandic National Broadcasting Service, RUV, announced that all longwave broadcasts have stopped. RUV's safety broadcasts on the radio that used to be on longwave have now moved to FM. RUV said that its radio transmissions are important in the country's civil defense, and the role of radio safety broadcasts is to ensure communication throughout the country. RUV said that the FM distribution system in Iceland has been built up and new transmitters have been added with backup power. So FM now covers the entire country. Transmitters have also been placed on the highlands and at key locations for seafarers. RUV said that in places where the FM distribution system does not reach, where longwave would have reached in the past, satellite systems such as Starlink should be used. RUV said that radio safety broadcasts have been on the airwaves for decades, but that technology has changed. The biggest change is that very few people in Iceland now have radios that receive long-wave transmissions. The long-wave broadcasting system is old, and reconstruction and other technical upgrades are expensive. There have also been some cuts on medium wave in Europe. A listener reported to me that Russia has reduced its broadcast via Moldova, from Transnistria specifically, on 999 kHz and 1413 kHz. This happened on the 1st of October already. 999 kHz is Radio Rossi. It is now on air only from 1600 to 2030 UTC. 1413 kHz is Vesti FM. This is now on air only from 0300 to 2100 UTC. Vesti FM used to be on air 24 hours a day, every day. Transworld Radio has also ceased all broadcasts to Europe, and this happened on September the 30th on the frequencies 621 and 1548 kHz. These also came from Moldova. TWR has also ended its Polish service on 1467 kHz via Romoul in France. After all this bad news, there is some good news. Voice of Hope Africa from Lusaka in Zambia has announced that it will return to its former full-time schedule. I reported in a previous podcast that Voice of Hope Africa was affected by rolling blackouts in Zambia due to electricity shortages. These rolling blackouts are called load shedding in Zambia. We also call it load shedding here in South Africa, and we had them less than a year ago. They are scheduled power cuts to save the national grid from collapse. However, Voice of Hope Africa is located near an important copper mine in Zambia, and the Zambian government has just made an announcement that strategic industries such as mines will not be affected by the rolling blackouts. VOH's transmitter uses the same part of the grid that supplies the mine, and therefore it will now receive reliable power every day. This means Voice of Hope Africa will now transmit daily on 9680 kHz, from 0400 to 0800 UTC, and from 1400 to 1600 UTC, and then move to 4965 kHz from 1600 to 2000 UTC. These are the regular and long-time Voice of Hope frequencies, but they were reduced this year due to the power issues in Zambia. Everything is back to normal now. AWR Wavescan, a popular DXing program, can be heard on Sundays on 4965 kHz on Voice of Hope Africa at 1800 UTC. That is good news in the light of the cuts that AWR has made to its own shortwave transmissions. So at least Wavescan can still be heard on the Voice of Hope Africa frequencies. One of my listeners and several other DXers in DXing forums and groups have reported hearing an unknown signal on 17665 kHz. The signal has not been identified yet, and it is also not heard every day. Maybe it's worth monitoring this one. It seems to be on air sometime between 1300 and 1500 UTC, but it is very irregular. A new station called Radio Sound of Africa, playing music from all over Africa, has resumed its test broadcasts on shortwave. The station announced that there were tests on the 18th, 19th, and 20th of October on the following frequencies: from 0400 to 0500 UTC on 6175 kHz, from 1400 to 1600 UTC on 6170 kHz, from 2000 to 2200 UTC on 6170 kHz. This sounds like another one that is worth monitoring. That might be interesting. Despite the bad news in the HFCC schedules about AWR, in the end, there are still 3,394 total listings in the B24 schedule. That's a lot of signals that you can still catch on shortwave. I examined the B24 HFCC schedules, and they also contain some intriguing listings. from Poland, Russia, and Jordan in particular. Whether these are real will have to be seen, in particular the Russian listings, because sometimes there are listings in the HFCC schedules that actually never materialize on air. But some of these new listings sound interesting, and I think they are worth monitoring when the new schedules kick in on 27 October. Voice of Russia has often appeared in previous HFCC schedules, but nothing was ever heard. There are very many listings again in the B24 schedules for Voice of Russia, all in Russian. I would not get too excited about this one. I don't think they are real, but some of the listed frequencies are 5920, 5945, 6000, 6025, 6070, 6090, 6110, 6120, 6155, and many others. Radio Russia, another station from Russia, sounds interesting though. There are only a few listings for this one, and they appear to be new. The signals will come from Moscow and from Khabarovsk. The times for Radio Russia are listed as 0800 to 1600 UTC on 13610 kHz and 1230 to 1500 UTC on 11955 kHz. They will come from a 250 kilowatt transmitter in Moscow and a 50 kilowatt transmitter in Khabarovsk. There is also a listing for a station from Poland. It is SPW Radio Warsaw Transatlantic Radio Station. It comes from a 10 kilowatt non-directional antenna in Babice in Poland. It is listed as transmitting in Polish from 0700 to 1500 UTC on 7415 kHz and from 0700 to 1000 UTC on 7430 kHz. This station registered their frequencies at the HFCC in 2020 already, so perhaps this is just a renewed registration and not a signal that will actually materialize. There is a new listing for Voice of Greece from 000 to 0400 UTC on 9935 kHz and from 0300 to 0700 UTC on 11645 kHz. Also from 1900 to 2300 UTC on 9420 kHz. It is listed as coming from the Aviles transmitter in Greece. And a new listing from Jordan for Jordan Radio and TV using a 500 kilowatt transmitter from Al Karana. The listed times and frequencies are 0500 to 0830 UTC on 7155 kHz. That is also on 11810 kHz. And then from 1600 to 1800 UTC on 11995 kHz. From 1700 to 2100 UTC on 6105 kHz. From 1800 to 2200 UTC on 9830 kHz. And from 2200 to 0100 UTC on 15435 kHz. Radio Europe from Alpen aan de Rijn in the Netherlands is listed as a 24-hour station from 000 to 2400 UTC. It is listed on 5995 kHz, 6130 kHz, 7335 and 18925 kHz. The transmitter power for this station is listed as 2 kilowatts, which seems to be quite a bit stronger than what it used before. Currently, this station is listed as using a 100-watt transmitter only. So if they start using this much stronger transmitter, if the listing is correct, maybe an interesting station also that will be possible to catch from further distances. There is also a new frequency for WRMI from Okeechobee in Florida on 17775 kHz. Also on air 24 hours from a non-directional antenna. This is an interesting one for me because maybe it will make it a bit easier to hear WRMI in Africa, where I am. All current frequencies for WRMI remain unchanged. I have a reception report from William in southern Illinois in the US today. Some stations he received on the 13th of October. He says he was sitting outside on his porch and he used the DX286, the Chodosen DX286, connected to a 20-foot reel antenna. He says it was a very pleasant fall day. He listened to Ifriqiya FM between 2000 and 2100 UTC on 17600 kilohertz. He says he wanted to keep listening to Africa, but he also wanted to scan the bands for other stations. And when he came back later at 2100 UTC, they were broadcasting in French. Before that, it was in Arabic. The SINPO was 45544. He says he picked up a new station, which was Radio Ndarazon International, broadcasting from Wifferton to Chad. It broadcasts on 1205 kilohertz, and the signal strength was SINPO 35433. He says he listened between 2040 UTC and 2100 UTC. So to end, the HF propagation forecast. But first, NASA, the NOAA, and the International Solar Cycle Prediction Panel announced that the Sun has indeed reached its solar maximum period, which should continue for the next year. The solar cycle is a natural cycle that the Sun goes through as it transitions between low and high magnetic activity. And roughly every 11 years, at the height of the solar cycle, the Sun's magnetic poles flip. NASA and the NOAA track sunspots to determine and predict the progress of the solar cycle and ultimately solar activity. Sunspots are a cooler region on the Sun caused by a concentration of magnetic field lines. Sunspots are the visible components of the active regions. They are areas of intense and complex magnetic fields on the Sun that are the source of solar eruptions. Scientists anticipate that the maximum phase will last another year or so before the Sun enters the declining phase, which leads back to solar minimum. This means that solar activity will remain unstable for the next year, with increased chances of seeing auroras during solar storms and possible HF blackouts at times due to increased geomagnetic activity affecting the ionosphere. We have seen this already. There have been 2 very strong geomagnetic storms this year, one just last week and another in May. Over the past 24 hours, that is 18 to 19 October, solar activity was moderate, according to the NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center. There is a slight chance of a minor solar storm, G1, over this weekend when I'm recording this podcast, that is 19 to 20 October. This is due to the influence of a large positive polarity coronal hole high-speed stream, or CHHSS, which affects the intensity of the solar wind. This will cause the K index to fluctuate between 3 and 4 over the weekend, dropping to 2 and lower from Monday. Quiet to unsettled levels are likely on the remaining days of the week. Some active geomagnetic levels are expected on 26 October again, due to another CHHSS influence. In plain English, shortwave propagation via the ionosphere will be average at best over this present weekend, 19 and 20 October, improving again from Monday, 21 October, for most of the week. But by Saturday, 26 October, HF propagation will weaken again. There is a link in the description of this podcast to a website called Ham Radio for non-techies, with clear and simple propagation charts that you can refer to for the latest HF propagation conditions on a daily basis, as conditions can change quite suddenly. That's all for today. Please continue to send me your news items and reception reports so that I can share them here. I think other listeners really enjoy that, and I certainly do. You can contact me at andre9@duck.com. That is Andre with the number 9 at duck.com. You can send me your reception reports or any other news that you have on that email. Happy listening, everyone.